And we are live. Welcome to Digital Renegade Podcast. I am your host, the Dashing Rogue. Luke could not be here with us tonight. He had other obligations, so we're not doing anything too fancy. But I did want to start this podcast with, I should say, I guess it's sort of a public service announcement, so to speak. When I originally started this podcast with a couple of friends of mine, prior associates of mine, we originally wanted to talk about, building community, building, giving, trying to self-improve. And part of I still want to do that, but at the same time, I don't know how to self-improve because I'm still working on myself. But one of the things I do know, and this is sort of what life is what not to do. And you slowly learn as with age what not to do. And one of the things you don't do is you don't hang out with people who suffer from borderline personality disorder. You avoid them like the plague. So, questions. John, Mr. Collins, welcome to the Digital Renegade Podcast. What is your relation with borderline personality?
That's not the best question in the world to lead with, is it? What we're talking about here, mate, if you want to just dial it back.
Okay, let's dial it back a bit.
Dial it back, right. To just throw in a label like that and say, what is your relationship with? It's like saying, what's your relationship with, like, AIDS?
Okay.
It kind of is. It's too broad a stroke, if you know what I mean. Because it's the thing, if you get to talking about, if you just throw it at me like BPD, right? BPD is a list of it's a list of behaviors.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a pattern of behavior. It's a very let's say what's the word? Consistent and completely predictable way of operating. But this way of operating doesn't involve any thinking whatsoever. So you've got it as to where you have people that we describe as being kind of BPD, who are in essence perpetually at war with themselves over what they think and what they feel, because they have trouble. Actually, the real problem they've got is that they have trouble trying to work out what are their thoughts and what really happened. Yeah.
Okay. So that being said, I guess what I'm trying to get across here is would you consider borderline personality disorder to be considered a mental illness? Or
hang on a minute, mate. Right. First of all, right. If you're gonna discuss this, okay. So let's use this label, borderline personality disorder.
Okay, let's use.
We'll agree that we're going to use this label, so we're going to talk in generalized terms.
Yes, right? We are. Okay.
So the thing is, but the problem with the generalized terms is because we're pointing to a pattern of behavior. We haven't got a machine that you can stick somebody in that can run a scan that can say, oh my God, you've got borderline personality disorder. It's all about in the way that people behave. Now, people who've got a brain injury, brain damage,
okay,
they behave as though they've got personality disorder, right? You've got it where people who've had like childhood issues where they've been, let's say, poisoned in utero, or they've had terrible parents who've given them crack so they'll sleep, right? That can cause a brain injury that'll lead to a pattern of behavior that's the same as borderline personality disorder.
Okay, so
let's look at it one way, right? If you've got two people together, you could say they were both borderlines, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them behaves in that way because they've got problems with their amygdala, so their fight or flight responses are altercock, badly wired, or wired in reverse. So they seem to think that they're never in danger, and then when they're not in danger, they think they are. So they make mountains out of molehills, but then when they're faced with an absolute total crisis where they're in trouble, they're like, it's great here, isn't it? Right? So you'll get it where it's like, you get off on the wrong foot. Like, say you're 2 years into a project and you shouldn't have even started it.
Right.
Right? So it's like you've got someone who's been off on the wrong foot, made a bad decision, and then made another bad decision, and they made another bad decision, and they made another bad decision. And then the same person can do no wrong. It obviously wasn't their fault because they're all about blame and not about responsibility.
Okay.
So they're all about, I can't have done something wrong, therefore it must have been you.
Okay,
So,
so that being said, could we argue then that borderline personality would be a system, a series of manifested behaviors that could that have never been corrected, let's say, but they all often manifest as a result of brain injury, whether it be through trauma or through alcohol or maybe physical injury, perhaps?
no, it can also be an exotic addiction, right? Say you live in a household where your dad is the boss or your mum is the boss, and she can do no wrong, and she doesn't keep very consistent standards as to what behavior is. She can do anything because she's in charge, and you have to put up with it. Now, if you were born and lived in a household like that, by the time you're getting to your teens, you're thinking, now, one day I'll have my household, and because the only way I've been shown how to do it is this imagined power and control freak household. So you then associate that with being having power. You know, people say, I don't feel empowered. Well, if you've got a load of people who are answering you whims, who are doing everything that you tell them to, well, you're going to feel empowered, aren't you? Like people get a hit, people get a buzz out of treating people cruelly. People get a buzz out of treating people in a condescending manner and things like that. Well, it's control freakery. You can become addicted to that. So if your household has been one of power, control, manipulation, and it's like, oh, well, that's how the world works. That's how power works. I need people to do as I say, and therefore that would be me complete, because that's all you know. So you've got it where it can be like narcissism. So it can be like an exotic addiction to attention and the illusion of power and control.
Okay,
So imagine you are a fuck up who doesn't know anything at all,
okay,
but wants to be in power just for the sake of being in power.
right.
So it's like, so you get a child's tactics, right? This is important. A child's tactics for taking power are generally to sulk and to spoil the situation and to be a fucking nuisance. Yeah. So it's like you will see the child's method of stamping down their authority from a borderline, which is to have tantrums and to visibly sulk. Yeah. To sulk, to be down, and so people are going around saying, oh, what's wrong with you? Oh, what's wrong with you? It's a way of getting attention.
So it's like a black hole. They want your attention. They suck you in into the crazy land, sort of speak.
But they want everything. They want sexual gratification. They want you to tell them they're smart. They want you to do as they say. They want you to talk like they do. They want you to think like they do. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
Okay, so then we could argue then that borderlines have a false sense of the norm, of the normal.
They have no sense of the norm, no sense of self, no sense of identity. They're like a ghost in the machine that cannot be wrong. So it's like to have said to me, what's your relationship with BPD? Right. Started off on the wrong foot, asked a bad question. Who are you talking about? Who are we on about here?
Well, I suppose I should. That is actually a fair criticism. I will be honest. I guess I was just talking out of how should you say it? I was just talking on the fly. That's what I usually do.
Well, yeah, right, okay. So
it was an extemporaneous question.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of was. You know, you'd have been better in leading in, because we're talking about what you call this birdie person.
Yes, this Ashton Birdie, this woman who was dating Baked Alaska for the longest time, and apparently she had a meltdown. She was put on what we would call a 5150 psychiatric evaluation hold.
When did that happen?
Let's see. I have it in the links in the description, and I will show it to you in a second.
I don't need to see it. When did that happen? Because I saw a couple of videos of her where myself and Dan were.
Was it like a week ago? Was it a day ago?
It was in May. May 8th.
So it's like a month. It's a month ago.
It was a month ago, but I wanted to talk about it because I've been wanting to talk about it for quite some time, just as a idea. As a
case study,
if you will, because I personally am of the opinion that there is a hell of a lot more of these type of people out there, especially within these political movements.
Well, yeah, it's because everybody I've spoke to, right, and I'll tell you straight up, everybody I've spoke to is certainly female and young who get involved in sort of the political side of the what goes on the YouTube on the internet. I've questioned them all that I've spoken to and says, what's your motivation for getting involved in this bullshit in the first place? And they generally all come back with the same thing.
Which is?
Well, it's usually a false situation, as to say they felt so helpless they had to do something. And it's like, well, did you know what you were going to do? No, but I knew I had to do something.
So they're acting on instinct then, like a borderline. Would you say that borderlines act on instinct more than they act on motive?
Well, they act on instinct, but it's like, which instinct? It's like they'll try and right. Did you hear this notion of idealization?
No, I do not. But could you explain it to us?
Right, that's where somebody like we'll talk about that crazy woman, that birdie person, right? Mm-hmm. In when she's decided to latch onto that baked Alaska, who is a buffoon as far as I'm concerned.
He kind of is. I've heard him be compared to a golden retriever by a few people. Yeah, I think that's probably the best description.
Right, let's stick to the topic of BPD instead of getting
well, say, but that when she decided that he was the one, she decided that he was perfect. He could fulfill everything that was wrong with her. She feels lonely, she's got company. She feels horny, she's got dick. She needs attention, she's got attention. So she would decide that he was the perfect answer to all her problems. And then when he isn't the perfect answer to all her problems, it's his fault and she'll explode. And it won't be anything to do with her, it'll be her BPD. Right? The thing to actually that stands out about her as being as a good example is a video that I watched the other week. It was boring as hell, where they were around at their house, these two other idiots off YouTube who tend to be a pair of jackasses who just do idiotic things in the street and get usually beaten up for it.
Okay.
These two guys were around at the house, and it seems that they were between themselves talking, and then she started to like charge about and start screaming and shouting and ranting, and then she takes a knife and threatens to cut herself. Okay. And then the next thing you know, she's saying, "I've cut myself and it's your fault." And then the next thing you know, she's called the cops, and then that's the end of the video.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's linked in the description, by the way.
Yes, right. And then the next day, she put a video out saying that, and she took the video straight down after putting it out. You sent me the link to it, and I was like, "This is glorious," because the person yesterday, glorious.
Did you say glorious, John?
Yeah, it's glorious because it was the same as every other borderline video that's ever been made.
Holy shit!
Okay. They're all exactly the same. What it is yesterday I was this person, but today I have changed. And I am a completely different person, and I'm seeking help for my problems, and I found God, and I'm going to go to Africa, and I'm going to help those poor, starving black people. And if you think that's wrong, it's because you don't care about black people. I've turned over a new leaf. I found God, right? Yesterday, a maniac cutting herself and calling the police. Today, perfect.
So it's sort of like would you consider this very similar to a false change in a person? Like I would say Saul, like let's say Saul of Tarsus, if he never found God, but he just said he found God and he never stopped being a dick.
Rogue, can I come on here with
sure.
John's permission?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, well, first off, I'd like to read you have someone was very kind to comment in the chat. What's his name? Dio. One of the scariest things is that BPD is not just a mental illness. There is the chance it is actually a biological virus. That would explain why it keeps escalating in the woman population.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know any research about that. That could be very true. A lot of
well, I can give you the insight into that.
I actually would like to know about this.
Hold John. I just want
John. I'd like to know a bit more about that. I'm thinking to myself, it may have to do with like plasma toxicodie or some shit like that.
No,
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 it's
no,
it's
no,
called
no.
you're talking about the parasite.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because a lot of these women are crazy cat ladies and whatnot.
Yeah, but that's too. You're talking about something there that takes down people whose immune systems have been destroyed more than anything else. There might be something to it. That's actually a funny story. But if you look at somebody like that, that would be the least of the problems. The worst problem they've got is getting out of bed in the morning. You know what I mean? It's a matter of you've got to put
Well,
it into.
well, in fairness, John, if they stayed in bed, they might do us a lot less damage.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to be snarky,
Right.
but my point is that I think because we're trying to keep this like on track. We're just talking about BPD as opposed to like the whole plethora of other mental illnesses.
Right.
And I guess we kind of got to keep because none of us here are neurologists or biologists or
It doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean you can't have studied. Right.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm sure we're all intelligent, well-read people, but
you've been asked. Well, somebody's put there that there's it's like a virus, like a malignancy, right? That can be said to be true. It manifests as because they say that the psychologists, right?
Okay.
Psychologists can't do very much with a BPD because a BPD will sit there and be like a genius of counter-espionage and just talk to you for 12 hours.
A genius of counter-espionage. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Right. So you give somebody an orgy of information.
Okay.
Right. So it's like, so you talk to somebody, say, I'm looking for therapy. I think I've got BPD. Right.
Okay.
You, as being someone who's talking to this person, has got to put up with talking to this person and talking to this person will lay on you a 12-hour long horror story of everything terrible that's ever happened to them and probably everything terrible that has happened to their friends as well and all the terrible things they've seen in movies. Right. So they'll sit there and they'll lay on a story which is absolute bullshit that will contradict itself all over the place and in essence have the effect of gaslighting you. You have to listen to these people telling you stories about the time they were raped. You have to listen to this person tell you stories about the time when their father did something terrible to them. So in essence, they traumatize anyone who wants to try and work with them. So people don't work with them. Let me finish. People will not work with them because it's like, hey, I've got my mental health to deal with as well. I can't take on all your bullshit because most of it's not true anyway. You're a borderline. You don't know how to have a meaningful relationship. You will try to charm me, or you will try and win me sympathy so I believe you because you want to be believed and validated. I want to help you sort out the fact that you're crazy. But you just want sympathy and validation, and you don't think there's anything wrong with you.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
So
it's like you see you're at cross purposes. You can't do anything with it. But psychiatry, where they're able to do brain scans and the like, right?
Right. Okay.
In borderline females, they can run scans of the brain and see that the endocrine system's in like full swing, which is like your body's own drug dealer.
Okay.
Yeah. So the mind of a borderline is producing extremely high levels of oxytocin, which they're addicted to, right? And as a human, as a male, certainly, you can become addicted to that neurotransmitter as well.
I see.
So they are, in essence, addictive. So right, it's the thing. All of us as humans, certainly males, we've actually got an addiction to oxytocin. All of us, and we don't know we're addicted to it.
Okay, can you define what oxytocin is?
It's a bonding hormone.
Okay, so it's a bonding hormone.
It's a bonding hormone, right?
It's released. It's kind of a product of evolution. It's released immediately when women give birth to a child, so they bond with it.
Yeah, mother's milk is the fundamental source of oxytocin, but you'd also get oxytocin from being picked up and handled. You know how nice it feels to be hugged.
Yes,
that's that chemical reaction.
Yeah, it creates a bonding mechanism. in the brain. That's why women will love. There was a line from a movie where the woman asked, "How can I love someone so much I just met?" when she had a child, and it's literally because there's this huge flood of oxytocin inside the female brain after she gives birth.
Yeah,
that's quite interesting.
And babies.
Right.
The way that you as a baby identify your mother is with that almost unique chemical signature of your mother as a supply of oxytocin. So it's in essence, in that regard, everyone can be seen as being their own specific narcotic, because we're talking here about a neurotransmitter that breaks blood-brain barriers, and things like that. So it's like that kind of thing. You know, you can. John knows something about the women. You know, you get certain women that we would refer to them as being fecund, where they're fertile. And you look at this woman and you're like, she's got something about her. She kind of glows. That's that. When you come across women who've got that kind of attractive sort of, there's something about her. It's generally that's what she's transmitting. Yeah.
I see.
So you're getting we're sort of borderline women, I call it the crackpot stir. When you've got their attention, they start to look at you.
Did you say crackpot stir?
That's a
British term. I don't know.
Yeah, that. Right. That's when women have locked onto you with their eyes, and they're trying to catch the attention of your eyes. And you look at them, and they've got black eyes, and they are like wet and black, as to where the pupils are dilated huge, because you're in essence being taken in like a piece of stimuli. You've become like the sun. Yeah.
So it's a thousand cock stare in essence.
Yes. Okay. Yes, it's that.
When women find a man attractive, their pupils dilate. It's how do I say? It's an unconscious response to attraction.
Yeah, of course it is. But if you're dealing with someone who's a crackpot, who is very shallow, who can only really, when getting to know someone, is to project themselves onto the other and say things like, "Where do I know you from? I know you from somewhere. Hey, you know, you're just like me in a lot of regards." You hear all these crackpot things people say, "Where have I feel like I've always known you. I feel like I've known you all my life." All these crazy things they say are based upon their emotions as to they've decided that you are the one today. And then all of a sudden that gives them a sense of, oh, everything's well in the world. And then that feeling actually fades, or something else comes along. It's like 1 minute you're eating McDonald's and you're thinking that's great, and then somebody comes along with a tray with pizza on it and you're like, fuck the McDonald's, I want the pizza. Yeah. But you put that together with someone who's also impulsive and extremely self-serving and fickle. You get it as to where you've got people who can be in love with one person with all their heart, and then for some God unknown reason cheat on them, and then say, "Well, it wasn't my fault. I was drunk." Yeah. So you've got at the same time as all this complicated chemical bullshit that's going on, which is all about. Let's have it right. This is all about staving off boredom and depression.
So, so you could argue then that the borderline gets high on their own supply, but is constantly scared of losing that supply, so they have to seek external stimuli to rope people into their psychosis. If that makes any sense?
No, it's not so much psychosis, because that's later, right? What they would do in practical terms, because that's just the bullshit term, would be to drag you, in a practical sense, drag you into their life, and want you to play a full role in helping them sort out all of the dodgy problems that they've created between themselves and the people around them, based on the fact that this person's a borderline. So what she would do is she'd introduce you to all her friends, and then tell you exactly who these people are, so you'd be carrying around her version of these other people, right? So she would get you involved. You become a character in her play. You then become involved in all the mind games. She'd also then start to use you as a weapon against her friends, because she'll tell her friends who you are. She'll say, "Don't bother with this person. I know this person's an asshole." And then be saying to that very same person, "My new guy's this and that."
Could we
So she,
argue that the because to me, from what it sounds like this type of borderline personality disorder phenomenon. I'll just call it a phenomenon, the borderline phenomenon. It sounds very similar to Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's idea of the Oedipal mother, I believe it is.
this, right, he's in broad strokes. He's looking at it from the top down. I'm trying to get to the nuts and bolts of what it's like. Yeah.
Right.
So it's all right sticking a label on it saying, no, this seems like this. Right. It's like, well, it could be that, but it could also be that you're dealing with someone who's, you don't know where this person comes from. You've decided that you like this person. You've decided it's good looking. You've decided that you've basically bought what's been put out into the world, and you've got absolutely no idea where that person's been. And it could well have been that borderline behavior is something like that she's not nurtured, where she's basically like she sees a father every 2 weeks and she lives with her mother all the time, and she's worked out that she plays mother and father off against each other, she can get what she wants, right? So,
Okay.
so that's an adapted strategy for her getting what she wants and never getting any trouble, right? And making her parents feel bad so she kind of gets out of the way of it, right? Well, you take them dynamics out of that household and you use it against boyfriend 1, boyfriend 2, boyfriend 3, friend 1, friend 2, and friend 3. It's the same learned pattern of behavior. You know that if you emotionally manipulate and use guilt and shame and the fear of abandonment, you can get what you want.
Well, so it's sort of like if I'm playing one bank against another bank, or one group of people against another group of people, and then profit in the end.
Yes. Yes. So it's like everybody around them is a character in their own drama. And their own drama, the way they see the world, is only a projection. Things are only what they think they are. There's no objective reality. There's no objective truth. So things are only what they think they are. And if they're not very strong-minded, it's very easy to talk them out of the position they're in if you can come up with a better story to tell them. Yeah. So it's like once you understand that these people, right, people like that, the thing that messes people up is you're dealing with someone who's extremely vulnerable at the same time as being extremely dangerous.
So they're a glass cannon, so to speak, like a glass cannon.
No. Right. If you understand the nature of their afflictions, this is about the being a pimp thing, right? The pimp understands that the ins and outs of the broken human nature. Okay. Right?
So we're talking.
So let me finish.
All right.
Let me finish. Stop interrupting.
All right, yes, sir.
So the pimp understands that the broken base human nature. So he sees a borderline chick who looks however she wants to project, but she's obviously putting on a show and she's not particularly sure of himself. The pimp who's sure of himself can walk up to there and say, "Good afternoon, I'm John, pleased to meet you," and completely blow her off her feet, understanding that she's very impressionable. If I make a deliberate statement, she's going to buy it, right? Say I'm not, but then at the same, somebody else comes up to the pimp, comes up to the borderline, who isn't a pimp, looks at her and says, "Oh, isn't she a little darling? Isn't she beautiful? She's got some problems, but you know, if I just love her enough and I fix her and I'm understanding and I don't do all the mean things that she's told me all the other people do, well, maybe she's a fixer-upper." So in that situation, if you project onto her that she's a fixer-upper, she then becomes dangerous. Whereas the pimp could see her as being a source of income, a source of attention, a source of sex, right? But the other guy who comes along who's completely unawares of what he's dealing with, he might think, "Oh, poor her, all she needs is the love of a good man." And in that situation, borderline goes from predator to prey. It's always about the person who's interacting with them. You'll be dealing with someone there who will have a different relationship with everyone she knows based on those kind of power dynamics.
Okay, so you talk about power dynamics. This is actually something I want to ask you. Where would a borderline, like we talk about hierarchy with Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, where in the hierarchy, if any place in the hierarchy, where would the borderline lie? Would they all?
No. It depends on the hierarchy, right? Borderline people, right,
Okay.
are shallow and superficial, right?
Okay.
So there's things that they're good at and things that they even see and recognize that people who aren't so shallow, who are looking for different cues from people, that they don't even notice. So if you think industries like fashion, right, borderlines are geniuses in that field because they've got an intrinsic appreciation for what is aesthetic. Yeah, what is nice to look at, what sounds nice, what looks nice, because they're in essence sensually trapped in that moment, right? So when you say hierarchies for borderlines in the professions of all the entertainment professions and all the practical sort of design sort of professions, they dominate it because their eye for what is beautiful or what is pleasing to the eye is far more attuned than yours. Yeah. So in some regards, they've got a lot of talent, but in other regards, they've got absolutely none. So if you wanted to say, let's say that there's a hierarchy for fashion designers, there certainly is, isn't there? So like, who's the top,
man.
right? So if we're talking about Peterson talking hierarchies, the hierarchy for fashion designers and even singers, maybe, right? Borderlines will find themselves right at the top of that, right? But if you were looking at a hierarchy for a successful outcome by way of finance, a successful outcome by way of family, no, they're right at the bottom of it. It's like they've not been robbed of everything.
Okay, so they haven't been robbed of everything. So is it possible then that these borderlines, the whole archetypical sex, drugs, rock and roll, party like a rock star, like was Kurt Cobain, right? Would he be considered a borderline?
From what with John's permission, can I comment on that?
Sure, go ahead.
No, Kurt Cobain would not be a quote unquote borderline. Kurt Cobain was pretty much a lifelong alcoholic and drug addict going back to his early teens.
Right. Well, he's codependent.
He never actually formed a what psychologists would call like a healthy self-identity, because
John, right, if you try and palm off, I'm not trying to be funny or anything, if you try and palm off to say no, he wasn't mentally ill, the guy was an alcoholic and a drug addict, that's like they're symptoms of his fundamentally what his mental illness was. And his issue is that massive codependent, needs other people. He's from the bad dynamic. His background, his home background was a toxic household. So it's a matter of he would draw any sense of self from others. This is why people become musicians. So it's like he, with his basically, he was somebody who always dreamed of having something, and then when he got it, it wasn't what he thought it'd be. He was just as miserable as he was in the first place. So it's a matter of, I've gotten all the way to the star. I've now lost my privacy. And people think they know me, and I don't know anybody, and I haven't got a friend in the world. Yeah. That's the sort of guy he was. That's like the guy was probably the maximally damaged entertainer. It's like, if everybody loves me, then everyone will be fine. Everything will be fine. And then come to realize, well, no, it wasn't that. Start again. Go back to square one. The problem is you. And then it's like that realization is why someone like that takes their own life. It's like in
fairness, Kurt Cobain was murdered.
I don't think so.
Well,
no, it's kind of self-evident when we got the toxicologist. No way he could have pulled a trigger on a gun, never mind aimed one. But
he does it. I don't give a fuck for things like that. It's a matter of if you find it right. If you were the sort of person who thinks that I'm going to get married to fucking Courtney Love and this is going to sort me out, you've got a serious problem. You have.
Yes, you do.
Well, I missed the first part about Courtney Love. I don't really care about Courtney Love.
Well, no, she's a very important figure in understanding how he ended up the way he ended up.
Well, they were both
go into that. Don't.
drug addicts, But the point I'm trying to say is that obviously he would have ended up dead sooner or later anyway. But my point is that Kurt Cobain, like I think that people like him who had like huge, extremely addictive personalities going back to
that's codependence. That's codependence. That's inverted narcissism.
Let me finish my point, please.
Let him finish, John.
I think that for certain people, and I can't speak exactly for Kurt Cobain, but I know some people like that. I think it's a form of literally chemically self-medicating because their brains are just out of whack. Now, that could be, I'm not sure where Mr. Collins falls on this, like whether the nature versus nurture thing is. But some people are, their brains are just born, malformed.
No, right. Go away. I'll give you someone to check out as to whose works in porn, John. It's a guy called Gabor Mate, but he's only up there with Jordan Peterson. They're of the same mind, and it's a matter of they worked first in mental illness, dealing with alcoholics and drug addicts, and they were finding codependence and personality disorders. So it's like they go hand in hand. It's like you chat this where you say this addictive personality. It's codependence. It's that, that sense you feel sometimes as to where you're missing something, where everyone else is out playing and you're at home. It's that, but you feel it all the time. It's that. It's chronic boredom. It's that I feel as though I'm not complete because there's something missing. I should be doing something. That feeling that they've got constantly, that's what leads to addiction. That's what it is. And then when it becomes a chemical dependency, it's like a cocktail. Because intrinsically, things like drugs, they don't do anything. They stimulate the production of certain narcotics that you might like. So it's like cocaine's all about dopamine and adrenaline, not about cocaine.
So would it be if we're going to use like the I guess you could say electrical or electrician and circuit board metaphor? Could it be argued then that if I were to put in more current into the circuit, the borderline in this particular case, or the mentally ill man, or what have you, they have bad transistors, they have bad, let's say, diodes connected to this circuit, and it makes it operate differently. Is that sort of what you're suggesting when it comes
No, I don't know how you're trying to frame that, to be honest, mate.
Okay.
I don't know what you're getting at, right?
Well, I'm getting at the fact that the borderline is wired differently in this regard.
But right, forgive me, but wired differently, so what?
So what?
So what? I mean, it's a matter of.
John, I think where he's going for is that not everybody's brain exactly has the exact same circuit board. Like we're all different.
And so what?
And
what difference does that make? What difference does that make in the way that someone behaves?
Hold on. John, I got this. I suppose what I'm trying to get across is when you talk about drugs and how like Cobain was doing so much drugs and shit like that. If it's someone who has a healthy psyche and a healthy mind and I would say a normal mind, could it be argued that somebody who doesn't have a normal mind, that doesn't have a healthy psyche, that is playing with a different set of hardware, that stimuli that he is injecting himself in, whether it's smack, by the way, or cocaine or weed or what have you, could it be argued that will not have any effect in some regards based on they'll feel the effects, but they won't actually act upon it?
Right. Hang on. Let's put it another way. Right.
All right.
Talking about that codependent feeling of constant boredom where you feel like you're missing something. Well, that's only like cold turkey, right? It feels like cold turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a matter of you've got it where people who are in this spectrum, can I say, they feel that cold turkey, so they take drugs to feel normal. They take drugs to be more like themselves. It's not that they want to feel better.
That was kind of the point that we were saying is, let's say someone is, to beg the metaphor of the microprocessor, if it's not functioning right, they are always thinking that they need this drug where, like, for example, from evolution, we see this, like, for example, there is a very low instance of people from Mediterranean ancestry that are alcoholics compared to those who are from Central and Northern Europe. Now, that is indisputable. I mean, statistics back that up. You don't have the same level of, let's say, people who are from Greece or Southern Italy becoming alcoholics the same way you do of people who are from Scandinavia or Ireland.
Well, again, then you've got population density, and you've got what would the local fauna and vegetation be capable of. You've got cultural difference, and then you've got a situation as to where alcoholism.
Yeah, but no, it transcends cultural differences because you can see those. Let me finish my point.
Let him finish, John. Let him finish.
When those people got transplanted to the United States, for example, you will see like Italians or Greeks when they came to the United States didn't have the same degree as alcoholism as, let's say, the Irish or the Norwegians or whatever did.
And alcoholism is defined as I have a problem, I cannot put the drink down.
No, and as well as that, alcoholism, if you think of it as, if you look at it as cultural and historical, alcoholism was what kept people alive. Because back in the day, we didn't have alcohol to make beer is the best way of purifying water.
It is. This is true.
Right, so you've got a situation as to where people in like the industrial, the early industrial revolution cities of Britain would have been drinking beer because the water is toxic. So they would start the day with ale. So it's like this is not it's not particularly helpful in coming to try and understand this what we're talking about is being pretty much an emotional trauma-based affliction. If you start going down that path and you start looking at historical and race, well, you're gonna be able to come up with, in every case, a different set of circumstances that made it so that these people were dependent anyway. Now, and then the same dynamics that make people come out troubled, like losing a parent, well, they happen then as well. They had those problems too. So it's like you get it where a lot of people who are in a lot of pain tend to drink a lot. Who are in a lot of emotional pain. I've seen a lot of guys fall off the bloody wagon and die of alcoholism. It's been it's a big feature of Place Rally. And it's a matter of, sorry. So it's a matter of if you open up that can of worms and you start to get to the roots of things like alcoholism, it's always a story of tragedy, and tragedy meets with all of us. It's always a lost parent, it's always a lost child, it's always a lost love, it's always a lost. So if we take those things into consideration as well, it becomes something a lot more chemical. It's more about the will and what drives people to do what they do.
Well, I would say this about that. This is going into alcoholism. We were going to talk about Ashy Slashy, but this is well, at the end of the day, I think this is interesting because if you acknowledge that alcohol served a utilitarian purpose back in the day to cleanse water, and
no, that's not what it means.
Alcohol wasn't used for that.
No, it wasn't. It's not. No. It's the fermenting process as a side effect of it will make water sterile. We'll make your fermented beverage sterile. It's not that they used alcohol to clean water. It's that they turned water into alcohol and it purified it. The fermentation process. So it's not that alcohol was used knowingly, it's that they could make a drink that purified the water.
That's interesting.
So we're talking about ale.
Okay, so that being said, is it possible that there, like, I don't know if you, like, I'm doing, I've studied a lot of how should you say it, like nutrition. Like I know that there's a connection, let's say, between your gut bacteria and your psyche. Is there any sort of like diet or what have you that borderlines tend to focus on that might?
No.
No.
You're trying to. It's like we can't have a conversation about this, mate, because you keep finding excuses for it and going around it.
Well, I'm trying to find a correlation.
Well, you're trying to find a correlation. You're trying to use reason, right, to try and understand something that isn't reasonable. So it's like we can sit here and say I can give you a list of loads of different ways where people end up exhibiting this bad set of characteristics, right?
Right.
And they'll all be different stories, as much as every borderline's got their own unique story as to how they ended up the way they've ended up.
Okay, so
they're all right. Let's put it this way: they're all unique in the way that they were created and individuals, but they've all gone down the wrong path. They've all gone about it the wrong way, and they've all ended up the same end product pretty much, but all went down the path independently of each other, and all have similar but different stories to tell.
So it's sort of like the Hunter S. Thompson quote: "One of God's own prototypes, high-powered, new, and never intended for mass production. Too rare to live, too strange to die." Sort of.
That's romanticizing it. That's like what those kind of people would say about themselves. I'm a rebel. I'm different. No one could tell me what to do.
So,
and it'd be a matter of them thinking that they're doing something new and improved and 2019, when they're actually doing something that's 1020. They're actually doing something that's prehistoric. So it's a base human being. It's like a base human being. But the sad reality of this world is that it will always be full of waifs and strays, and we'll always have servitude, and we'll always have slavery, and we'll always have situations where people are born into situations that it's going to be difficult for them to get out of. People suffer terribly in life. Those who've suffered the most have adapted to suffering. Those who've adapted to suffering then see that as being an optimal strategy for success in life because they've suffered. And those people who've suffered, and the strategy that they put out as to protect themselves at the same time as getting what they want, is the borderline personality disorder, pattern of behavior and strategy. Whether they learned it from one place or another place, they learned it, and that's what they do.
No, I disagree strongly, John. I think that you are putting way more emphasis on nurture than nature.
But does it matter? Is it something that needs to be split along those lines?
I'm not arguing whether. Well, I believe it does matter, but that's not my argument. Let's first decide whether or not it's true. Now, whether or not it matters, that's kind of up to individual interpretation. I mean, what you think is important and what I think is important, that's separate. That's kind of a judgment issue, correct?
Well, you're making it, yeah, right, okay.
Whether or not it's like, if does 2 + 2 = 4, you say, well, does that matter?
No. You're throwing a one of them moral relativism.
No, I'm not. I don't do moral relativism, John.
Well, you just did, John.
No, I didn't do moral relativism.
I like how you guys are both called John, and you call.
I know. I'm going to call you Collins, and you call me Steele. How's that?
Well, just use your real name.
You don't. Well, anyway, just.
Well, okay, so that being said, could we argue then that borderline, because it's not a mental illness,
it is.
Is it a consciousness problem, or is it like?
Well, you don't know what consciousness is to say is it a consciousness problem.
Well,
right,
I mean,
hang on, stop. Right.
Yes, sir.
John was saying right there. It's a judgment call, and it's kind of what you think's important, what isn't, right? If we could answer the question of consciousness, we'd be the 3 richest men in the world. This is where it gets off. It's like, is this a consciousness thing? It's like the finest minds in the world can't tell you what consciousness is. So
when you say conscious, I'm confused. When you say conscious, do you mean like sentience, like being aware of that you're alive?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
But we can't get to the bottom of that. We don't understand it as people. We don't understand why we're conscious and why the animals aren't. This is, I mean, it's so. It's
no,
like,
and I'm not saying that we do. That I never said that. I was just my argument was simply about the causes of BPD. I believe that the probably a lot of them are organic, or and by organic I mean not just simply genetic. I mean they probably could be results of TBI, traumatic brain injury or things like that, or perhaps fetal alcohol syndrome, or all these other things that are not purely genetic.
All right, here's one for you, right? Here's one for you that'll create just the same person. You get it where a trusted elder say, a community leader, a priest, an uncle, or something like that, molests, sexually assaults a child at like the age of 13, and then says, don't tell anybody about this. No one's ever going to believe you. You're a worthless piece of trash. And it's a matter of, this is just between me and you. This is my little secret. You've just taught a kid there at 13. You've chemically changed them. You've removed their virginity. You've broadened their horizons to something new and showed them a new game of control as to right. This little secret that we have between us, I can have other little secrets with other people, and I can dominate by having the goods on people and things like that, right? Okay. That's a big pattern of behavior turned out by a pimp, right?
By a pimp, or a pimp archetype, we should say.
Yeah, but someone's done that. Someone did that for the sake of power and the sake of control. Now, you can get, like John was saying, like brain injury, like some kind of, I don't know, fungus or disease or something like that. But you've also got it as to where people who corrupt other people early in life will create these people too. So it's like, right, you can get it where, I mean, this is the point I make as to where, we're splitting, right? You can get it where rich millionaire kid, right, was raised by nannies and au pairs, right?
Right.
From the outside world looking in, everybody's saying, well, he's a lucky kid. His parents are millionaires. Kid doesn't know he's lucky. So he can be deprived. He can be abused by his caregivers. He can be lied on, lied to, lied about. He can be punished, and then it get covered up by his caregivers. So he understands this abuse sort of pattern. He's a millionaire kid. Then you can get another kid that's been raised by a mother that's a drug addict who's failing completely to protect the kid from all the idiot people she brings around the house. Learns the same dynamics. The two people against each other, they become 21, 22-year-old and manifest exactly the same neurological problem. So it's like the road to hell, if you like. Well, there's many different ways of going about it. So it's like, yes, you can get it where certain people are being done without. I mean, you can get borderline people come along who they've had no boundaries placed on them in their home lives. There's been no standards set for them of how to behave. So when they get in later in life, they get around people who haven't got any standards either, and then they fall prey and then learn the new system.
So it's an outlook. It's an outlook then, isn't it?
No, it's a pattern of behavior.
Okay.
It's a pattern of behavior. Do you know the big one is where they fall down on this, right?
Okay. Yes. Let's talk about the patterns of behavior.
Right. First, it's simple. Overthinking, right? Overthinking something. Somebody says something offhand, and at the minute you heard it, you didn't seem to realize that you were being put down. And then 2 hours later, it's playing on your mind, and then the next thing you know, hang on a minute, that was a slight at me, and they might not have meant to hurt your feelings, but you imagine that they did, and then you spend the next week working out how to destroy that person who hurt your feelings. Overthinking, strategizing, something very small becoming something very big, and in this self-destructive pattern, they can't stop thinking about it that way, so they become obsessive in that. So it's like it's a pattern of behavior as to where the people who upset them never understand what they did to upset them. They don't know why. Because if you flat out abusive towards someone like that, they'll reciprocate, right? But if you're like underhanded, or backhanded with a compliment or else a slight, the next thing you know, they're obsessing about it for a fortnight. They've decided that you hate them. They've decided that you hate them, so they hate you. So it's that overthinking, and then that everything's going wrong. So you've got a borderline girlfriend, and you say, sometimes I wish you'd just shut the fuck up and just try and enjoy yourself. And then the next thing you know, she'll be like, he hates me. And then she'll be bad-mouthing to the other guys that she's got on the side, saying, he doesn't appreciate me. And then the other simp's like, well, I'll appreciate you. And then the next thing you know, she's bed-hop from one guy to the next because he's promising something that he doesn't even understand. So it's a complicated issue. You're trying to put your finger on something that's elusive, and also trying to trying to understand it, right, with reason. But you're dealing with people that they don't bother with reason. They just do what they think's right, and then they spend the rest of the time trying to rationalize it, make excuses for it.
They're just dogs chasing cars. They wouldn't know what to do with one if they caught it. They just
Yeah,
do
well,
things.
they managed to fuck up everything meaningful in their lives on their own, and no one has to do anything to help them. So it's a matter of, a lot of it comes from abandonment anxiety, right? And then this is how they fuck other people up. So you get yourself a shiny new, say Baked Alaska's thing latches onto you and says to you, Dashing Rogue, you must never, ever abandon me. Never abandon me, never leave me. I'm really frightened of being abandoned. Don't abandon me, don't abandon me. My issues are all based on abandonment. But it's not abandonment, it's imagined abandonment, right? So in essence, once you get programmed, she'll make you promise 1,000 times never to abandon her. And you'll say, I promise, I promise, I promise. And then she'll abandon you. So you couldn't abandon her before she abandoned you. So in her mind, she won because you didn't abandon her. But at the same time, she's left you programmed, brainwashed, sworn under oath, Mr. White Knight forever, I will never abandon you. So that does you in. You've been Pavlovianly programmed always to come back.
So that being said, you can't understand them in the rational sense.
No.
Can we understand? Like I've always been told that the borderline is like a shapeshifter. They shapeshift and I use metaphor again. I use metaphor when science fails and reason fails. Use metaphor. I've been told that they could shape themselves to whatever you like. They will basically become chameleonic in nature.
Right. I'll tell you a story that Tommy Sotomayor told a caller 2 nights ago, right?
All right, tell me.
He got borderline quite recently. He's like 40, he's same age as me. He's like 43. And he was going out with a girl of 20, right? And he said that he couldn't believe how she turned out, and when he found out what was going on, because he found out that she was fucking a lot of other people on the side and she was charging them money for it. She was a prostitute. Although she saw prostitution as being something that was, hey, everybody does it if you need to earn, right? She thought of it as being nothing. And he sussed out, he said, and this is the thing where he kidded himself, he said that she was the smartest person that he'd ever known. Now, Tommy Sotomayor is fucking smart, right? And he's got a 20-year-old girl, and he's saying, this girl seemed to know everything. She was the smartest person that I've ever known in my life, and she does all these jackass things. Like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, no, Tommy, and you know better, and he knew better because he went on to say so. She mirrored him. He's a smart guy, so she was smart back.
Could you explain what mirroring is?
Right, okay. I sit in front of you, and I want to really impress you, so I want to convince you that I am very familiar and that I'm everything that you want me to be. You would project out into the world what you'd want to see. So if you see yourself bounce straight back at you, you found perfection. So if I was to say, I'd like a tall, very, in her own way, a bit slutty, but very good sense of humor, intelligent woman, right? If I let that be known and somebody found out that that's what I was like kind of looking for, that'd be kind of what I'd project anyway if I was, interested in someone. They just give me what I want to see. So let me finish.
Go ahead.
So this same borderline that says done Tommy in, and he was believing that she was as clever as he was because she was mirroring to the next guy who was maybe a great big football fan. She'd have been the world's biggest football fan and end up mouthing and mouthing off and being stupid, not knowing anything about football, but she said she's an expert, right? They will be whatever they need to be to impress the person that they are the greatest thing in the world. They completely, and this is a weird thing about borderlines, is they completely throw away their own needs. They say, forget it, and it becomes all about you. So they do the best to be everything that you want them to be, and they're like a dream come true until they're not. And then all of a sudden, they very quickly swing, and all of a sudden, you mean nothing to them. And that's the thing where they hurt people. You may love this person, but you mean nothing to them when they've moved on. And you're like, well, how could someone be so fucked up as to build something very meaningful that you think's pure, but to them it was just an act. So that's how they psychologically destroy men who get in with them, because you wouldn't believe it true. And then the more you rationalize it and think, well, what did I do wrong? Where could have I, because it's all, they basically, you will get the blame shifted to you by both them and society, as to say, you failed as a partner, right? All the blame goes on to you. Then you sit in self-reflection, working out as to why it fell on its face, and it has to be your fault. It has to be your fault. So the years you might spend trying to work out where you went wrong ain't going to lead anywhere, because you've got a rational brain. They haven't. So what you think's got value didn't have value to them in the first place. So it's like the disease they leave behind is one of, you didn't know anyone could be so cruel. And they may not have tortured you, they may not have abused you in that regard, but the abandonment that they lay on people, in some cases, it ruins men for good. It's like, yesterday she loved me with all her heart, and today I am nobody, and she's just called the cops on me. I mean,
wow.
It's really bad, because the thing is, guys who get involved with them, we've been talking about them, but the guys don't get it. The only guys who actually get what they're dealing with is the pimp. The pimp can manage them. And why is the pimp powerful? Well, they like him because he's got boundaries. They like that guy because if they know if they push him too far, he will hit them. But they also know that fundamentally, the thing is with borderlines, they need protection. They need protection. And that's another thing where they mess guys up. Guys are like, she's a liability. If I'm not around to look after her, God knows what's going to happen to her. And you know what? It does happen. Bad things happen to borderlines. They end up in bad situations with bad people. Yeah? That their need for protection and your sort of male need to protect the one you love, that's all to cock as well. So the only good relationship for borderlines is if they find themselves in with a pimp who will enforce rules with violence and offer protection. Although to say
I just have to say this, like, speaking from experience, you actually don't need to use actual violence in dealing with the borderline. So the threat of violence is generally speaking enough, because you can treat, you know, I mean, I gotta be honest, like some of the best sex I've ever had was with the borderline. You just treat them like shit. And oh yeah, they're totally demons in the sack. And you don't actually have to get physically violent with them, but generally speaking, just a threat of violence is enough.
Yeah, well, right. Well, the reason why people do violence to young people, you know, like you get a puppy, and the first time it does something bad, you give it a clout, and you never have to do it again. It's because the fear of violence has become the tool of control. So it's a matter of the fear of violence.
Like the baby elephant with the chain.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If the threat of violence works, it's because the violence has been used. The threat of violence has been used before. It's that you've not created reins of your own for control. You're using somebody else's reins of control. Yeah.
So I recommend that everybody should have one bunny boiler in their life, because the sex is just going to be unbelievably good.
Well, I'd recommend that you don't ever go near one, because they will mess up your ideas as to what good sex is. Because as far as I'm concerned, I mean, sex with borderline women there's no comedy, there's no fun, there's no spontaneity. It's like you've just paid for the services of a porn star or a prostitute. They're basically an animal that will fuck you to death. It's like you got into bed with a female Terminator and she decided to go town on you.
I was gonna, you know, I would say no sex before marriage, guys. But well, yeah, no sex before marriage.
Here's another one. Here's another one they do as well, right? You're dealing with, in most cases, a nymphomaniac, someone who's perpetually horny. It's like if you were a guy who was walking around. Well, if you were a guy who was walking around and you were perpetually sexually aroused, you'd be walking around with a great big hardle in front of your trousers, right?
Right.
You'd probably get arrested, right? Women, you can't tell. So you're getting where they're getting where they're hypersexualized nymphomaniacs, where they're always horny. The mind's always working that way, and they're weighing up people like meat. Everyone's like, oh, he's all right, like guys do, and women go past like, oh, she's nice, she's nice.
The reason that borderline women tend to be hypersexualized, it's not necessarily that they're nymphomaniacs, is that, and John alluded to this, is they have no boundaries and they're extremely impulsive. One of the dominating characteristics of BPD is impulsiveness.
Oh, yeah.
And because they don't have healthy boundaries or boundaries at all, and they're impulsive, hypersexuality is just, that's kind of the natural byproduct.
Well, to finish the little anecdote, it's like, if you can accept that this person is someone who's highly sexualized, who wants and needs a lot of sex, right? Mm-hmm. They'll, with guys that they're with, that they're steady with, they'll actually cut you off. You'll get it so you get sex every fortnight or every week. And she will deprive herself of what she wants to punish you, because that's part of her power dynamic. She sees sex as being like a race in the hole, forgive the pun. And she will then use that sparingly and strategically to control you.
Yeah, but there's an easy fix to that. I learned.
No, there's another. Sorry, John. Let me just finish.
You just as soon as they even attempt or hint that they're turning off the tap, you're like, get away from me, which they cannot stand.
Yeah, well, the thing is with the turning of the tap thing, it depends on who you are. I mean, I'm looking at it. If you were with your eye, if you were a babe in the woods and you come across this information, your borderline girlfriend is like only having sex with you once a week, and it's a matter of where else is she going to get it? Because she will be doing. She'll be telling some simp somewhere that my husband doesn't touch me, he doesn't love me, he only has sex with me once a week. Yeah, and then she'll be having an affair with someone at work, saying that I don't get enough at home, having out of whole cloth created the situation where she's put you on bloody rations. See,
right. That's why you always treat them like shit, because you because then they need the self-validation, because they have poor boundaries, so they don't have a strong self-identity. So that's the quote unquote pimp mentality, is that you make sure, like, as soon as they start to try to play that game, you're like, get out. Now they have to win you back, because they don't have any sense of self. So then you can use it, and then you can, trust me, you can treat them. I mean, the things I did to these women. I mean,
oh, come on, John, come on, seriously.
He didn't say anything. He didn't. Don't be soft. He didn't say anything.
You wouldn't do to a rented mule.
Oh, damn.
So I'm just saying, you can, and it was all legal and consensual. All these women were over the age of 18.
Okay, John. Please say that's what you said there. Say, would it be right in saying that that's something that's of the world of about 20 years ago, right? Now you're saying that, right? Okay, we'll cut up rough and we'll put on a bit of a demonstration and we'll adjust our attitude. Well, today, in the days of social media and Grindr, they've got options now. If you're not giving them what they want and you want to play any kind of game, there is an army of fucking simps out there who'll take the job off you. So the choices are open. They don't have to come back. Well, once upon a time they'd come back. You'd. Oh,
that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah. Well, that's a big part of it now. I've known it where. Right, because I say my borderline ex, I took to kind of monitoring the situation and people, because I got associated with such an idiot that other people knew were an idiot and didn't tell me, that everyone started to report to me. Yeah, my ex had like 12 guys on the go who were all her boyfriends.
Jesus,
12. Yeah, right, and she'd move amongst them, and she'd fall out with one, cut them off, go back with the other, and all these relationships were in secret. Right? So wow. She had so many people waiting for, as soon as someone dropped the ball or she decided that she didn't like them anymore, she'd just move on to the next guy she's got lined up. And then if she falls out with him and she starts feeling nostalgic about you, she comes back. So it's like with social media, borderline women have got harems of men. When we call it the friend zone, Yeah, it's a bullshit term actually. The friend zone. That's her talent pool.
Her talent pool.
Yeah, you get it where borderline women will have been, certain ones of them will be grooming guys 2 years while they're going and doing their thing. And this one guy behind a bloody keyboard somewhere, he's thinking, oh, I've got my waifu, my online girlfriend. She's fucking the whole world, and she's having that same one-on-one relationship with you as she is with half a dozen others.
Oh boy.
Oh God, yeah. It's like if you think, right, say maybe on your social media you've got like 20 or 30 women who are all over the world who put up nice pictures of themselves and are generally, nice to look at and friendly, right? So say you've got 20 of them in your 300 friends or whatever in social media. Do you see them as being like future targets for sexual attention? Well, borderline does. So it's a matter of, and as well as that, they're not bothered what guys look like. They're not bothered. They're not bothered. And this is the thing where the guys as well. So if you're a well turned out guy, right?
Right.
And say you've got involved with a borderline and say borderline's ex-boyfriend has hunted you down because she's fucked him up and she wants to tell you what he's like. The guy would turn up and he'd be like fucking a homeless fucking beggar, crusted with fucking muck and shit and hadn't changed his clothes in 2 weeks. And she's been fucking that guy.
What?
Yeah, you find that. And it's a matter of, like you see these stories of the ugliest woman in the world getting arrested and it turns out she's got 4 kids. And you're like, someone fucked her.
Well,
someone
had to fuck her, right?
Right. So what kind of guy is going to go with just the worst woman in the world? Well, he's
maybe there's a lot of blind men in the world. So
you've got others who are just thirsty and desperate and reaching out for any kind of companionship. So you get some rotter tell them all the things they want to hear, and all of a sudden they're in love, and the next thing you know, they've fucked an ape. Yeah. Well. Okay. Well, men do that and women do that. It's like no matter how ugly some woman in the world is, there's always some guy out there who'll fuck her. And as long as we've got that, as long as we've got it where people fall in with these lunatics, we've made it so it's enabled so these people don't have to stick. You know what I mean? If you were a borderline crackpot woman and you're like you're on your 60th relationship. Yeah, because a lot of them are. Yeah, a lot are. They're on the 60th relationship. If you can't drill it into her head that this crusade you're on will one day end, right? She's got no reason to work. She's got no reason to suffer. She's got no reason to try. She's got no reason to persevere as long as there's another guy who's willing to give her what you're giving her.
It should be noted. We're saying she a lot. Is this because borderline personality disorder?
Because we're guys. No, it's because we're guys.
Well, also, borderline personality disorder is predominantly a female. It's way higher among women than it is men. Like narcissism actually is. I think it's probably 50-50. John might know better than I do.
Well, actually, it's narcissism is like a borderline that can hold it together.
They're not. They're both cluster Bs, but they're not.
Yeah, but they can hold it together. Narcissists have got thick skin. Narcissists can handle a lot of criticism. Narcissists can play the game. They know it's a game and they can play it. The hero of the borderline is the narcissist. The borderline would one day like to be the narcissist who can hold it together. That's why the values are all to cock.
But so I think Dashing Rogue's question was, we were talking about women, and my argument was that BPDs overwhelmingly tend to be female.
Right. Well, there's another side to it. The borderline males, there's lots of them. Borderline males are generally gambling addicts, drug addicts, gambling and drugs, because they don't get away with the sex thing unless they're really attractive. Now, attractive borderline men, right, are an absolute scourge to the women they find themselves falling in with, because you can reverse the dynamics to find the good girl who finds the bad guy who's just got a few rough edges, and if we could knock his rough edges off him, he'd be perfect. So you reverse it. So the kind of prey the borderline man goes after is the good girl, right? Where we're talking about
the female fantasy is always taming the wild man.
It is, yes. So it's romantic. So that's where they end up falling in with the wild man, right? It's the same dynamics reversed. Although the thing is, men haven't got all this social protection, and as well as that, other men don't tend to put up with more borderline men's behavior. So borderline men get knocked into shape by the men they work with and the men they knock around with, because nobody wants to put up with that shit. You get certain
getting beaten up or killed because men don't tolerate that.
Yeah, right. And then you've got to say there's another side of the dynamic as to where the borderline men, right? Say other guys don't stand for their shit, right? Right. So you get men who hang, so you get tomboy girls who hang around with just men, right? And they say, oh, I'd rather be around the boys. Well, that's a bad sign, because they know they can get away with a lot more. So when you get girls who hang around in gangs of boys, it's because they're whores. It's not because they prefer the company. It's because amongst the girls, they can't compete. So they go amongst the men. Well, borderline men attempt the same thing with girls. This like gay best friend sort of thing, where one gay guy, it doesn't happen very much these days, but one gay guy would work his way into the little network.
So like that Vox, the Vox guy, the guy who basically tried to do the new Adpocalypse. Would you say he's probably a borderline?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you say the gay thing, right? That's a different thing altogether. I mean, it's something to touch upon.
There is a huge amount of, there's a disproportionate amount of what Jordan Peterson would call neuroses among the gay male population, as opposed to the heterosexual male population.
Yeah, and neuroses, when you talk about that, that's like feeling, thoughts encumbered by emotion, neuroticism. Yeah, so it's so the say borderline guys, right? The level on which they operate is they are usually a guy attempting to attract women through sympathy in much the same way as borderline women attract men through sympathy. Women fall for it just as easily as men.
So
I don't believe that, though, because I think women generally find weak men unattractive.
No, it depends. It depends if they're a woman who likes the idea of being in control, which there's an hell of a lot of. So women will actually seek weak men that they think they can handle, but they can't handle them because they play all the same games as female borderlines. So they end up cheating on them.
So does that mean that Ashton Birdie could believe that Baked Alaska is weak? And she's playing off of his sympathies. Like, how exactly would this go?
I don't know Baked Alaska well enough. Only to understand it.
I don't think it's really fair for us to ask psychoanalyze people that we don't.
Right.
I understand. I don't mean this in a mean way, Dashing Rogue, but
no, of course not. And the truth be told is, I just brought it up as an example. There was in current zeitgeist, and even then, it's the internet, so it's like 30 years ago, essentially, or 20 years ago, because it's fucking a month ago, I believe.
Everything is multiplied by 1,000 or whatever. But yeah, I just don't think that John and myself can. I don't want to speak for John, but I'm not going to try to psychoanalyze someone I've never even talked to.
Yeah, right.
I guess you're right about that.
But there are certain things that we can say, right?
Okay, so like what?
He's fucked up there, getting himself in so much trouble in the first place. You can't look past that. Right, so it's a matter of all we could actually accurately say fairly about Baked Alaska is that he's bought himself a bill of goods and he's going to have to face the repercussions of it. But he had to be stupid in the first place to believe that was real, that came at him, because he's not met her in a bar. He didn't go to school with her or anything. She's someone who's hooked up with him online. So it's a matter of he's guilty of that, right? Now, he may, in his mind, this is where it's tragic for people who cop for people like that. In his mind, he believes that she is something different than what we can see in the way that she behaves. So it's like he doesn't even know her, and that's going to be the thing that he has to deal with himself. He might know how she behaves, he might know what she's like, but he doesn't know her, and he's got no idea where she's been. And to try and find out where she's been will be for him to hear 1,000 horror stories, which he doesn't need to know. So it's a matter of, we can't say, well, she's this, therefore he's that. It's like, he could well be someone who's been a fool once, who's kidded himself. So it could be a matter of that Baked Alaska is deluded, having sold himself a bill of goods. That doesn't mean that he's a messed up, fucked up person. It might mean that, but it means that he's someone who's been fooled. We can all be fooled.
Okay, so that leading into that, what are certain things that guys could look for to avoid these type of women? What should they look for? Like, there are certain sort of lifestyles these women tend to flock to? Is there certain patterns of behavior, like you were talking earlier?
Yeah, there's a ton of them. I don't know if John wants to field this question.
All right, I'll throw one out and you throw something else out. Mine would be, if she's covered in tattoos, that's a giveaway.
Okay.
Yeah, and
because addiction to pain, something else that she's got addicted to. So if you see young women full of tattoos, that's a key earmark of someone who likes pain and is addictable. So it's just written all over the body.
Yeah, well, I would also, to piggyback on the tattoo thing, it's also a sign of, like, I think they used to call it peacocking, like signaling to the world, look at me. And so any kind of behavior like that, where they're trying to, someone who has, if you meet a girl and, like, she shows you her Instagram or whatever, and there's like 5,000 photos of her doing selfies, okay, that's bad. I mean, I think John will back me up on this.
Yeah, it's absolutely bad. And as well as that, it's something that all men should know. I've given this piece of advice probably out in every podcast I've ever done on this subject, and it is, I've forgotten it.
All right, I'll come back.
I can't believe it.
It's just
not right. Well, it was more about the notion being, if something's too good to be true, it generally is. Along those lines, I had a better way of putting it. But it's like, if you can kid yourself. Now, this is the thing, right? John was onto something really important there it's like, if someone shocks you to get your attention. Now, there's nobody in the world who's resistant to shock, right? And there's hundreds of ways you can shock people. You can shock people by having an orange Mohican. You can have some really, like, alarming looking piercings in your face. You could have mutilated yourself. You could even have a way about you as to the way you scream and shout and you are, right. That predilection to shock to get attention. The predilection to shock to get attention, that is a definite no-no, because that tells you something, that in the circles where this person is welcomed, everybody does that. Now, to shock people to get attention is abusive, yeah, because you don't know how you're going to react. And while you're just in a state of shock, it makes you susceptible to suggestion. So if someone shocks you and tells you something, you tend to remember it. That's why people dish out instructions with beatings. They do that. It's like, if you're somebody who talks about occult shit sometimes. Yeah. And I say, well, you get it wrong. It works in a practical sense, right? Magic in the practical sense done by a borderline or a dangerous woman would be to shock you and then lie to you while you're in a state of mild shock.
Well, actually, to piggyback on John's point is, everybody's familiar. Everybody's familiar with the concept of psychological boundaries. One of the things that happens when you're shocked, at least temporarily, your boundary goes down. It's kind of like the pills on the Enterpriser. Just for that split second, they're short-circuited and they're down. And that's when you're susceptible. And no, John, you're absolutely right about that. I never thought about it that way, but that's how that works.
Well, do you remember when we were kids, right? Well, you're the same generation as me. We don't see it very often or hear of it very often these days, but when we were kids, there used to be flashes, right? Flashes. A guy who's naked.
Oh, those sick fucks, yeah.
Those fuckers. I know what I know what you're talking about.
That was a big thing of when we were. No, I know what John's talking. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so that guy who opens his coat to you and shows you his dick, right? That's doing exactly that. He's shocking you. He wants to basically put you into a state of shock, right? That's like on kids to have been flashed to say that the borderlines go about it the same way. I mean, I talk to say a lot of strange women locally, and I put it to one once. So like, if you want to get men, there's nothing to stop you from like not wearing any panties and just flashing, and you're getting get women giggling. So yeah, it's like women's ability to just throw it at you by flashing at you is like there to behold, and that's a tactic of the borderline as well.
So
it's to shock, it's to flash you, it's to sexually surprise you.
They glamour you, then, isn't it? To use
it doesn't work.
It doesn't necessarily have to be sexual, but that is the way they could do it.
Well, the thing, but
like goths, I was like one of the things I've noticed about borderlines is they oftentimes have that gothic, like punk rocker type of vibe to them. You know, to go and piggyback onto the whole tomboy thing, but at the same time, I've seen goths just goth the fuck out, and I've seen a high corollary between borderline personality and goths. I will say
you also find a high corollary between borderlines and party girls, though. Girls who dress up to the nines and go to nightclubs and look to pick up guys who are buying drinks all night. You'll find them amongst them as well. It's just that the goth type ones, they've had their self-image damaged. Where a lot of the time they live in a household where mummy spends 2 hours a day doing a makeup and hair, and the little kid doesn't get any attention.
No, also, the goths might not be at the same like attractiveness level to be the LA party girls, where they can go to the, get on the VIP line to go to the clubs and stuff like that. So that's the avenue that they take.
The most tragic outcome, I think, for girls is where they live with mother, and mother's the only one in the house who's allowed to be beautiful, and that if mummy's pretty, daughter's ugly, and it'd be a matter of anyone who gives that girl when she starts to become a woman, any guy who gives her attention based on her looks, that's like fucking magic to her, because she's always been told how ugly she was.
And by magic, you mean by the ability to take down your shield.
Well, the thing is, women with damaged self-images, you see men with damaged self-images quite a bit as well, but women with damaged self-images who've always been told they're ugly by people who just basically want to keep them down, that's really tragic how that ends up, because it's like, whenever you look at this is a point I was going to make before. Whenever you look at a photograph, or else you see a woman in real life and you say she is beautiful, you are never the first person who saw that. You are never the first person who saw that. And if that person has got these a damaged sense of her own appearance and the like, you know what I mean? It's like that way in has been used by everybody who's come across her where she's failed to be protected. So it's like the damaged self-image, women who are beautiful who go around saying they're ugly. Say, avoid that, so when we put the list of things you should avoid in women, predilection of shock, covered in tattoos, the other one, mouthing off about how ugly they are when they are obviously beautiful. Because that's some weapon of manipulation.
They're begging for a compliment as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely so. And if that works, right, you know that it works for everyone else as well. It's like, you ain't special. This is the thing with guys who get in with these women. The hardest thing to get hold of is the fact that you are not special, and you were never special, and you were almost picked out at random because you were the nearest cock. And it does a hell of a lot of damage to a guy's pride to have been used in that regard. It's like when women cry about getting used, this guy used me. It's like, what about the guys who get used? I mean, women with their self-esteem, I think women are less sophisticated emotionally than men are. And there's a lot of really powerful base emotions that go on in men and males.
I would say the proper word would be less regulated than sophisticated.
Okay, well, I don't know. My notion to defend weak people is strong. right? I don't like seeing people get picked on. That's something that's strong. And if I don't do anything when it's going on, I know that that's going to hurt my feelings later on. I know it kind of demeans me a little bit. It devalues me to stand and to do nothing, So I'd say that's a complicated set of male values, right? When you have those kind of constructs within you and they get destroyed, yeah, that's a major problem. As to where I don't know now how I'm supposed to behave around women in a respectful way because I've been disrespected by one. Yeah, so it can actually do permanent damage to a man's sense of self and the other because they've been betrayed and because the things that they thought they'd done right brought them a very, very negative outcome. So it's like you thought you did everything right, but it failed anyway, and no one's trying to tell you what you did wrong. Yeah. So it's like the damage that's done to men's sense of pride and self and ego when they get borderlined, it's like a new beginning. Because all the rules that you had, that all the things that you carried with you that got you in so much trouble in the first place are then in question and have to be destroyed. So it's like, I don't see, the thing is, I understand this because I do quite a lot of counseling. I understand if you're a woman with BPD, stay away from me. I cannot help you, whatever. I can't do anything for you at all, right? There's nothing I can do for you, but it's a matter of guys who've been turned out by them and have had their values and boundaries violated and destroyed. We can do something to help those guys so they don't make the same mistake again. But as far as the women goes like that, there's no one in the world who can fix them.
Except the pimp, maybe.
Well, the thing is that...
speaking from experience, the pimp doesn't fix the borderline.
Manages it, protects it.
Oh, perfect word.
Yeah, manages it.
You're not changing them at all.
Yeah,
but you can manage them.
And give them an escape. Always have an escape strategy. You see, that's the thing with borderline women. The next guy is the escape strategy. They're the world's greatest escape artists. So it's like she's breaking up with you. She's got another guy lined up who she can get in with tomorrow. That's her escape strategy. If she's got a pimp, he's the escape strategy. She goes back to daddy.
Yeah, have you noticed this though? Like, at least in my experience, like I've only been involved with 2 women. They would totally fit all the BPD check marks. They don't really want to escape the I feel I'm not a fucking pimp, but I mean, whatever. They didn't want to escape that. They kind of, in a weird way, they're almost like there's a masochistic streak inside them. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, but it's fundamentally right. Look at it this way: Dashing Rogue. Yeah. We'll tell the story of when the Dashing Rogue went and got himself a prostitute, right?
What? I didn't get a prostitute. What?
I'm just this. Hey, hang on, shut up. We'll tell the tale.
Okay.
Dashing Rogue.
Don't violate confidences here, man.
No, it's not true. I'm just making up a story.
Okay, fine. I go and hang out.
Dashing Rogue finds himself a prostitute, right? Prostitute comes round and she actually tidies his house for him, because some will do that. Tidies his house for him, gives him a nice blowjob, has a nice bit of sex with him, leaves the next day, and everything's absolutely fine. Dashing Rogue decides he loves this woman and that she needs to stop being a prostitute, right? So then Dashing Rogue gets in contact with this woman and says things like, because this is always the winner with prostitutes is, I can't understand how you can do this to your parents. That'll generally trigger them, right? So Dashing Rogue decides he's going to save this prostitute. You like movie that? You ever see True Romance?
I have never seen that movie.
Right, okay.
Is that True Romance? Is that your ancestors are niggers?
Yes.
Ah, great fucking.
Well, that's about the John that goes to rescue the prostitute, right? So he gets set up with her. He didn't pay her. That's the problem. A friend of his set him up with a date.
He was a prostitute till after he had sex with her. Yeah.
Yeah, but then she goes back to Daddy Pimp, and it's a matter of he finds himself doing murder to get this prostitute back, right? The reason for the pimp to be there is because the John who turns that way and decides, I love you, somebody in the world has got to be able to deal with that dangerous man. And the guy who can deal with that dangerous man is the pimp. Anyone that woman needs to be running away from, the pimp can deal with. That's a big part of why the pimp's there.
That movie, the guy she was with was more dangerous than the pimp.
Interesting.
That's how it plays out. But there's a big reason.
He kills the pimp and the pimp's bodyguard, and
this sounds like a badass movie. What is it called again?
True Romance. But it's a matter of that.
It was actually written by Quentin Tarantino, although he did not direct the film, and it stars Christian Slater. Who's the guy? The guy that played the Sicilian John, the nigger.
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken. Yeah, there's a great scene. You could just Google "your ancestors are niggers" on YouTube, and you'll see that. You'll see that one of the best scenes ever.
It's Dennis Hopper's in this.
Dennis Hopper. It's shortly before he died. It was a great scene.
It's like one of Tarantino's best stories.
Yeah. Because I think it was better that he wrote it and didn't direct it. Because I think if he directed, he would have fucked it up.
Yeah,
he just wrote the screenplay, and it was great.
There actually is a comment. I wanted to read this off, and I think
I actually go to the comment. Respect your audience.
Yeah, I gotta respect my audience. I love to hear you guys. We're gonna wrap things up a bit, but I'm gonna start reading off some of the comments because I figured this is for them mostly, but also the fact that Luke isn't here this week, so I figured we could just do something, a little bit helpful but a little bit different. So I'm gonna start from the top because Dia, one of the scariest things is the borderline personality disorder is a mental illness. It's actually a biological and affects people. We talked about that sort of mimetic, so to speak. I'd say it's more mimetic than it is biological. Let's see. We go to John's. Interesting, getting deeper in the subject. Check Fin virus. Okay, we're gonna go. It says, "Oh yeah, here we go." Meaty Hit says the ending of Fight Club, it's like he was banging a borderline chick, and then he discovered.
Well, he was. He was.
Yeah, he was fucking that Marla Singer chick, right?
Yeah. Now, Marla Singer, right, is an extremely good example of a dangerous woman because she's played by Helena Bonham Carter, and she's getting bit past her best. But once upon a time, it was like she was an absolute darling, right? And the faded darling with the bad lifestyle, that's the dangerous one. That she's as dangerous a woman as you could ever meet.
I want to add a caveat to that because I actually read the novel before I saw the movie back in 1999 when I was a young lad. The only reason Chuck Balanchuk, the author of the book and the film, is a homosexual, and he only put that a female character, as a foil in there, for
a straight audience
to help market the book. Initially he just wanted it to be purely about men and how they lost their place in the world. And there's a recurring theme especially if you read the novel as opposed to the film. And I always thought the novel was far superior to the film personally. But the idea of a woman, he's gay. He's never been with maybe he has. I mean, he's a full-on homo. So that's something you need to take into account there about the Marla Singer thing. He was writing that as a homosexual who has low regard for women. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, well, he did. The thing is it's all analog, isn't it? It's all human. So there's a lot of validity to her as a character, as to say, this is what a dangerous woman looks like. It's like her idea of fun, right, was to put herself in places where people were a lot worse off than she was. So she could derive a sense of self from basically taking glee in that other people are suffering worse than she is.
Yeah, I mean, she was an extremely damaged human being. Yeah.
Yeah, but she was finding catharsis. It wasn't making her better. It was cathartic to her, in the same way as to say, I would never try and counsel a BPD woman because I'd just be there to provide catharsis. I would just be entertainment. She doesn't want to get better. She wants someone's attention.
Right.
See, that's the thing is where the like people who watch soap operas. People who watch soap operas, they like to see people doing worse than they are. Their life may be fucked, but the people that they're interacting with in the soap opera, their lives are always a hell of a lot worse than normal people's lives. So with that, be able to find emotional catharsis in the suffering of others. I mean, yeah, that is masochistic, isn't it? It's masochistic, and it's like that cruelty. See, that's the thing, you know. We don't admit it to ourselves, but everybody, I think, from being kids, if you've got all your shit together, you know what it is to enjoy to be cruel. Because we've all done it. We've all beat a dog with a stick when we were 5 or something like that. We've all beaten a smaller kid. We've all been beaten on of our generation. I used to get battered off older kids than me all the time, and they'd enjoy it. And you know that people can take satisfaction and even, you know, take glee in being cruel to other people. Now, most people get over that, but those that don't, they end up as people who cut up animals, people who light fires. Yeah, if you think that those people can do that kind of harm to themselves and to other things that they see as just things, it's like, imagine the damage they can do to you. Yeah. It's like there was a fight locally broke out here, right? A fight broke out between a man and a woman, right? In the street where I live. And this woman was attacking this guy and he couldn't hit her back, and it found its way out into the street. And in the end, she stabbed him like 22 times.
Jesus.
Yeah. A woman stabbed a man to death after having a street fight with him, and he couldn't hit her back, and she was swinging and swinging and swinging, and then she pulled the blade on him and stabbed him to death. And it'd be a matter of who's capable of that? What else is that sort of person capable of? And it'd be a matter of, if you've been brought up in that world where you don't mean shit, you're nothing, everyone's treated you like crap, how do you treat other people then? What if it's been done to you, is it okay to do it to others? And that's kind of how the world plays out when people are all children. Well, so-and-so did it to me, therefore I can do it to you. That's a big one as to where the betrayal, because the thing that the lasting, if there is a disease to the borderline thing, right? The disease is the damage that betrayal does, right? Betrayal's really bad. When you get proper stabbed in the back by someone who you love, that's the worst thing that can happen to you, other than you be fucking murdered. That's bad. That's like soul destroying death. Yeah, they do that. That's what they pass around. That's the disease they pass around. You get stabbed. Someone stabbed you in the back and they hurt you so completely, right? Mm-hmm. Then you go and do it to someone else, understanding, I know how it feels. I'm going to really hurt this person in the way that I've been hurt, because it hurt me. Therefore, I know it works. I'll use it on them. If you know that it's painful to have your fucking, you know, someone take a lighter to you, set you afire. If you know that hurts you and someone does it to you, you're like, well, I want to hurt them. Boom, set them fire. That's what we see knock on. It's the betrayal. I mean, the ins and outs of betrayal in human relationships is, I have a trust with you, I break that trust, right? You can take everything away from it, like, you know, everything, strip it down. That's something that all human beings are wide open to. The same that we're wide open to shock, we're wide open to betrayal. And say, if there is a disease, it's knowing what it is to have been betrayed. And that's the thing, we're all, say, Jesse Lee Peterson calls it a fallen state. Well, I'd say that the fallen state that he's talking to is the fact that we've all been betrayed by people which we loved and trusted to some degree, and that's what leaves people damaged. And it's like, you look at someone like BPD, right? This is, you have to take into consideration, that person lives most of their life in fear, and fear plays a part in all of the decision making. Fear. And it'd be a matter of that. What made you that person? And it's like, you can't just undo that. You can't get to the bottom of it. But that self-centered fear, it means you can do no wrong. You're a victim. No matter what you do to other people, you're still a victim because you still feel like one. It's bad stuff, man, when you get into this, to get to talk about this in a deep way, is to say, we can't do anything for them. All we can do is avoid them. And if enough people avoid them, they'll be forced to change. When the tactics don't work anymore, they'll have to change. And that's the thing. Most of them have never been forced to change. They've been enabled. They've been validated at every step of the game. So they've never been forced to change. So there's another guy with another dick who comes along, they don't have to change.
So that being said, because it sounds like borderline personality, and I'm not saying this to like insult anyone, but it sounds like borderline personality mutates like the AIDS virus does. It's unique for everybody. Everyone suffers, but ultimately, it will mutate and it's personal for each person. Does that sound about right, John?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not like that, right? I was trying to hit it from a kind of emotional angle that could be related to, and you've tried to clinicalize it, and you can't, because you're making the mistake, right, of trying to use a rational brain to work out what something irrational is. It's not about that. It's about how they feel. It's like there's no accountability. So in trying to say, well, it's this, it's like you're trying to make something accountable when it's not. They're not accountable people. They're not accountable for their actions. They do something bad today, and tomorrow, if you bring it up, you are out of order because somebody else did that. They're not accountable. They disassociated from themselves. So it's like a point to make was where that video that the Baked Alaska chick made was just enlightening. Was one day you had a potentially murderous psycho calling the police, screaming and shouting and raving and waving a knife about, and the next day she's a completely new person. How the fuck are you supposed to deal with that? I mean, what hurts people, right? What hurts people in life is not mean people or cruel people, right? Mean and cruel people, if they're cruel and mean all the time, you can come to know them because you know what you're going to get, right? What if you've got one person who's mean and cruel one day, and then the next day, a darling, wonderful, a person you're proud to know, someone you love, and then the next day they're mean and cruel again? It's not meanness and cruelty that fuck with people. It's inconsistency. It's mixed experience. So if you've got it where one day you've got a girlfriend, in the morning she's fine, in the afternoon she's freaking out, and at night she's all sorry, right? That mixed experience of drama, it messes you up because you're having to deal with it. You're the other side of somebody else's mood swings. So their mood swings become your mood swings. That's where it's malignant as well. So this person who's giving you all this drama, all this stimuli, all these ups and downs, leaves. And then all of a sudden, the drug's been cut off. You're like, why do I feel so bad when most of the time I was actually just getting shouted at and being, used as a rubbing rag? And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, I feel so terrible. And it's the mixed experience. It's like you should remember that you're remembering the person for the good and the bad. And that person had the capacity to be good and bad within 5 minutes. So it messes you up. The lack of consistency fucks you up. And then it has you then looking for these patterns of behavior in other people. And then it can make it so that you cut yourself off from the world by seeing them everywhere. That's self-defeating completely. What you have to do is you have to sort yourself out so you're protected against that kind of thing. And then you can just navigate the world understanding that, hey, people are not what we'd like them to be. They're not what we hope they would be. They are what they are. It's like once you've had your eyes opened, I mean, if we really want to look for patterns of psycho behavior, you'll always find them in everyone. You'll always find them. The thing you need to look for is consistency, and a lack of consistency. That's the sort of person that's going to do you harm. It will do you harm. It will fuck you up.
All right.
So it's a matter of, to anyone listening, right? It's not about understanding this. It's about understanding that you can't fix it. And your urge to think you can fix someone who's profoundly broken in ways you don't understand, that's you playing God, and you'll pay the price for it. You can't fix them. Don't try and be a white knight. Don't try and save these women, because you're not the first to have tried. You're never the first to have tried.
That being said, some people aren't looking for anything logical. So some people can't be bought, bullied, or reasoned with. Some men and some women just want to watch the world burn. To quote the Dark Knight. I think.
Right. Well, the thing is, when you say want to see the world burn, right? You're always, when dealing with these, because we're talking about here like low-level nutters, right? So they're not sophisticated. They're lacking education. They don't know they don't know how big the world is that they want to see burn. To them, the world goes as far as their understanding of it goes, and the relationships they've got in it much the same as anyone else. What if you're someone who doesn't know anything? What if you're someone who's dumb as fuck, who in essence has been educated by the television, educated by the culture, educated by the social media, and you're dumb as fuck, and you don't understand the world, yet you're angry at the world and want to see it burn? It's like, mate, it's like the ones that we're pointing at here are like street shit. These are like circus performers. These are low-level shit. Now, you can get high-level shit people in the world. I mean, if you want to see a high-level, high-functioning shit person, go and check out that interview that Jordan Peterson did with Milo Yiannopoulos. I mean, that guy admits he's so fucked up that thing that got him in trouble, where he talked about having the relations with the priest. He says to Peterson, that's like not even amongst the 100 worst things that's ever happened to me. It's like he's dysfunction on top of dysfunction on top of dysfunction with the things that's happened to him and the things that he's done. And it's a matter of, he can't go back to the place where the abuse started that made the guy he was today, because the memories just do not exist anymore. So it's like, when you start to talk about complicated issues, right, as to where the way people end up, it's like, good luck unraveling that one. You're never going to do it. I mean, someone trying to put Milo Yiannopoulos right, it would be a lifetime's work. I mean, Milo Yiannopoulos is someone who says, I wish that the cure for gayness, where they send them to these camps where they try and cure gayness with electroshock therapy and that. He wishes that stuff worked. He wishes it worked, but it doesn't. So it's like the baggage that some more sophisticated crazies.
Well, actually, I might have taken something different away from that interview. I thought that he was brutally honest about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
he admitted that he was fucked up, and he said that in a roundabout way, he kind of said his life would be better if he wasn't a homosexual.
Yeah,
and he was open to. He didn't know for certain, and I think he was honest about this. He didn't know for certain whether his homosexuality was caused in whole or in part by the fact that he was molested as a child, but he was totally open to the possibility that at the very least played a role. And I thought that was, pretty brave of him to say.
Well, it was more telling to me that when he put it as to say, who's to say if, whereas because when people think back, these Me Too moments people have and stuff, people think back to that person abused me. Well, in his case, it was just another day. So loads of bad things happened to that guy. And I mean, to him, I mean, he's a big time narcissist, right? In his way, it's like the way he talks himself up is almost. It gets corny, doesn't it? The way that he talks himself up, talks about himself as being.
Yeah, I think that was what I enjoyed about that interview was he kind of left that behind him. In that interview, he wasn't, overtly narcissistic like he usually is.
Well, he knows what he's like. This is the thing about him. He's self-aware in his own nature. So he understands other people who are like he is very well. So it's like he's at war with himself, and him being at war with himself puts him head on with the LGBT social justice warriors, because he doesn't have their views, but he's the same kind of person, isn't he?
Well, yeah, but
he knows what they like.
The majority of people, I think the majority of homosexuals and, well, certainly transsexuals, in my opinion, are at war with themselves. I mean, they're fighting for their soul. For, I know you don't believe in any of that spiritual woo, but I mean that more in the secular sense of their soul. They, their identity, in the sense of their sentience, perhaps. And I believe that I was kind of shocked about, him saying this, especially now that he got married to a gay guy and he's actually raising a son with his now husband, and at the same time admitting that his homosexuality may be a direct result of the fact that he was abused as a child.
He doesn't know it, but he doesn't know it. But that's the thing, is to say, it's like, it's not just the point where I brought him up, it's not just the one thing that made him who he is. There's layers upon layers upon layers of dysfunction. Where didn't he have that was a good conversation as to where, for the first time ever after that, where he got in trouble for something he said in a podcast, he was saying for the first time ever, he remembered what it was to be a 14-year-old. And it's like, wow, you actually made a slight breakthrough there psychologically. Because that way people say, yeah, when I was 5, this happened to me. And they don't.
Well, that's what I mean, John. Like, I think that it should be encouraged. Like, for all his faults, it seems like that he actually is undergoing some sort of psychological growth now, and that should be encouraged.
Well, only that, right? Growth is he would have a more profound understanding of right and wrong. That's how it'd come out. Because it's like when the 30s, like 38 or something, 38-year-old guy talks about what happened to him as a 13-year-old, and they say, oh yeah, some guy, right? That's a 38-year-old guy saying what happened to him so many years ago. It's not the voice of the 13-year-old kid. It's like when you see when you hear of something bad happen to a 13-year-old kid, and you're like, oh my God. You read it, and then if something like similar happened to you, it's like, hang on a minute, I was that 13-year-old kid once. I find this story of what's happened to this extra 13-year-old kid horrifying, and then all of a sudden it comes back onto you. I was that boy once. So it's like, to a guy like him, there's parts of
actually, John, didn't he say that? Like, his stepson, he was saying, who I believe is 16, and he was saying that if that had happened to his stepson, he would kill the person.
Exactly, yeah. So he's only just now becoming aware of the gravity of the things that happened to him that made him the man he is.
Right.
which is.
And he was a child at that time. So you do not hold a child responsible for the actions that adults perpetrate on them.
But also, there's the reality. See that rule as well. That's what stops people from getting over it as well, by not holding kids accountable. When I was a kid at 13, I was capable of all sorts of things. Where it's a matter of, if an adult does onto you, that's a big crime and a sin. But the thing is, I'm smart enough to know that 13-year-olds groom adults for sex.
Okay.
They do. There was a story recently where a bus driver who was, he had learning difficulties. He was you're kind of going out to the extreme. No, I'm not going out to the extreme here. I'll just to tell you, says kids can be accountable. There was a guy who was a bus driver who he had sex with a girl of like 14. And he didn't go to prison for it. And it's a matter of, when it went to court and the story came out, she groomed him. She'd used him. And it's a matter of the home she came from. Well, it was a matter of all that kind of thing were going on anyway. And if you're a disadvantaged young girl or boy, if you give sex to an adult, you're massively validating them. You make them feel brilliant. And your ability to make them feel brilliant will make you feel great. All of a sudden, you've got a way of getting the kind of attention that you want. And I tell you what, kids turn out like that. And it's like I understand that as a reality of it, as to where kids are accountable. I mean, I think 11-year-old. I once broke every window in this garage. I must have broke about 28 panes of glass, 30 panes of glass. Broke every window in like a car dealership. Yeah, I was 11.
All I'd
I
say
did
is
it.
when I was young, I committed criminal acts and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna really have a conversation justifying.
No, it's not about justifying
Well,
it.
guys,
It's not about John. It's not about justifying. It's recognizing that you had a choice when you did it. You didn't have to do it, but you had a choice. So in essence, you were free and accountable and deserve to pay for the repercussions of your actions. It's just this legal sense where we draw a line and say that the minor's not accountable. It's a legal thing in terms of your conscience and what damage it might do to you to be acted on or an actor in something. Well, that's completely different again. If we draw a line and make a distinction where the law stops and starts, we don't get any nearer to understanding it.
So that being said, guys, I think it's about time we end
Yeah.
the chat here. We've said all we can say. I mean, I'm coming at this from a rational thing, and from what I understand, borderlines are not rational.
Yeah, and you shouldn't use rational thought to understand them, because they're not rational. You could carry on forever trying to say, well, what was the sense in that? And there is no sense. And if you go looking for it, you'll never find it. It's like, stay the fuck away from these people.
Amen. Dashing Rogue, thank you for having me on. I greatly enjoyed it. John, it was a pleasure talking to you again. Hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
And those of you in the audience who are still with us, like, favorite, comment. Let me know if this was helpful to you. If it wasn't helpful, please state why. This is Digital Renegades podcast. Out.